Beer Brigade, social media, we always do things about health tip Thursdays and things like that. So a while back, we did have that conversation about gut health, like your gut health affects your mental health. And it's more so like the nutrition's effects on mental health. And a lot of times it's more about the malnutrition and the outcomes from and they had studies on it with outcomes of food mood connection, right? And certain foods have been tied to brain health. And then you also get the issues that come back when you're dealing with kids. So you have kids that go to school. Sometimes they're malnourished, and then they get diagnosed of. They're talking about like, oh yeah, you have ADHD, when really it's the chemicals and the sugars in the food that are causing some of the issues that they're having, right? So then,
Mhm.
like, when your gut health isn't in check, you also start experiencing other issues that kind of go from there. So let's kind of like start on that part of the conversation and kind of go from there. And I'm gonna get you guys' take on that.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. From my end, it's really, really important to also talk about how some of this develops, right? So when I was working in schools as the lead therapist on staff, a lot of times teachers would come in and they would talk about a child's behavior and say, hey, I think that this child has ADHD, or I think this child it has autism spectrum disorder. We didn't call it that back in the day. I've been around for too long. But there's all these things that we think are happening. Maybe, maybe we think that the child has oppositional defiant disorder or something. And a lot of times I would go into the classrooms in the very beginning of the career. I would go into the classrooms and kind of assess what was going on in the environment. And luckily, I was able to advocate with the organization because we had a lot of funding support to be able to bring some nutritionists and staff too, because a lot of my research was showing me that the food was affecting the behavior far more than we had given credit to. And why this was especially important to me as a Black woman is because most of the children that I was working with were also Black children or brown children. And so the food that they were getting access to in the urban environments were foods that were actually causing more complications in their mental health and their behavioral health. And so it's very political, right? Like, where are the grocery stores? Why are the grocery stores where they are? What are the costs of food in one neighborhood versus the cost of food in a different neighborhood and things like that? So I started working with families of young children early to talk about nutrition and how the nutrition was going to actually help with the behavioral issues. So I had different I had different diets for different suspected disorders. So if people suspected that the child had ADHD and I hadn't done any evaluations yet, kind of like, hey, mom, dad, try this diet for the next 4 weeks and let me know, let's see how the outcome is. And many of the times we saw a lot of effects, changes in the diet, how the changes in the diet affected changes in the behavior. Some of those were very sustainable, and some of them weren't, just because, again, of economic reasons and political reasons as such. But early on, we started making the connections between nutrition and behavioral health, and subsequently addressing it with children so that as they become adolescents and they become young adults and older adults, they understand how their food really affects their behavior and affects their mental health overall.
I mean, you brought up like a lot of good points. Like I said, I deal with mostly adults, but most adults were children at some point. And children, I think, are at the mercy of the situations that they were born into. So, as you mentioned, if you are really kind of at the mercy of a high fast food, high refined diet, there's food desert, so you don't have, like you said, the grocery stores in your neighborhood that are accessible, or you cannot afford to buy like the fresh fruits and vegetables, you really are at a disadvantage. Because more than likely, not only is your whole kind of familial setup probably lower income or socioeconomic status. So you're not able to eat correctly, but you're not even able to get supplementation. So vitamins, supplementation are not the be all end all, but they can help. So it's like you're caught on both ends of really not getting what you need. And as you know, children, that's when your brain is forming. So when you don't give it the appropriate nutrients and minerals during that developmental phase, it does affect their adult brain function because it wasn't able to kind of form um, optimally. and it just kind of continues to perpetuate. So, I really admire what you do, because setting kids up as well as you can as children is really the first start of setting them up as adults, whether we want to believe that or not.
Yeah. And if we could get in with the kids early on, we also have a change in their home environment, right? Because mom doesn't want to cook 85 different types of meals, right? Like if I have to cook for Johnny and this is the diet he needs, then everybody in the family is about to eat the same thing, right? And so it impacts siblings, it impacts the parents. The problem though politically is that many of our children who are growing up in these particular environments don't have access because of these food deserts. And politically, we're placing all of this fast food in neighborhoods where we don't need the fast food, right? Like we don't need it. And it's causing all these additional issues for us, especially as we get into that gut health and talk about how so much of our like we talked about a second ago, how much so much of our dopamine and serotonin levels are stored in our gut, and if our gut health is not strong, if it's not good, it's going to affect our mood. And a lot of times clients, my adult clients, are coming in and thinking that their gut health, their physical health issues only affect their mental health because they're not happy with what's happening physically. Like they don't like the way their body looks, or they don't like the way they feel tired and sluggish, and subsequently that's causing frustration and disappointment because I used to have this energy and I used to be able to do that. So their connection to it is backwards a little bit, right? It's inverse because they think that the physical is causing their satisfaction around their physical health is caused, or lack thereof, is causing mental health issues, when actually it's no, we need to actually get into the physical piece of it, being your gut, to talk about those dopamine and serotonin levels, which affect your mood, which affect your interests, which affect your highs, which affects your satisfaction, etc.
Yeah, so those are